3 novels, Cry Uncle, which I have but I couldn't find, Whale Man, and the Committee on Town Happiness, which I can't hold up because it has not been published, it'll be in 2014. And he has 7 collections of poems. His poems, and I have some of them here. Love Song with Motor Vehicles, I love that one. The Vandals. Butterflies and Elephants I have, but I could not find it. When I get home, I'll be ready to home. And his most recent, which some of us have been spending time with in the poetry workshop, Long Division. People are clapping for that already. Okay. His poems have appeared in American Poetry Review, the Gettysburg Review, Kenyon Review, the New Republic, the New Yorker, Paris Review, Pleiades, and the Yale Review, among others. Impressive, really impressive list. In 2011, he was anthologized in the Best American Poetry, as well as the Pushcart Prize. His prose has appeared in journals including The Believer, the New York Times Book Review, and again, the one subscription I've held on to since I was an undergraduate, the New Yorker. He's been the winner of 3 Pushcart Prizes. He received his MFA in writing from Columbia University, where he studied with, here's some big names, all you poets out there will know these, Carolyn Forche, Richard Howard, Dennis Johnson, who also writes fiction, Stanley Kunitz, William Matthews, and Nobel laureates, Joseph Brodsky, Shezlov, and Loge. Close enough. Since 1998, Alan has taught at Davidson College, where he is professor of English and director of creative writing. He's also a core faculty member in the Queen's University Low Residency MFA program. His wife, who is also a wonderful friend and great artist, is here, Felicia Van Bork. You might have, if you were here this summer and went to the Waterworks Gallery, she had a great exhibit called Portraits Just in Time that were in caustics. And she would have the same portrait, but then through the encaustic process had changed them so that they were always in flux. 4 of those were her husband, Alan Michael Parker, which I thought was pretty wonderful. If you look at the poster with those 4 wonderful, couple of them pretty strange photographs, Alicia also took those. Late breaking news, just in the last couple of weeks, Long Division was named the winner of the North Carolina Book Award, also known as the Roanoke Chowan Award for Poetry. It's been in existence since 1953, and its winners have included Carl Sandburg, Dorian Lux, and Lux, we debate that, and you've heard her say it, we still don't know, Randall Jarrell, and Fred Chappell. So pretty high company there. I asked my students in the Long Division class, in the poetry class, as we were reading Long Division, to read some reviews of that book and some interviews. And I asked them to give me favorite points or quotations. And I'm going to read a few that they came up with. We pondered Long Division, the title. One of the reviewers said that as he was writing his review, he tried doing Long Division. I did some Long Division myself on the board, and Susie Williams was constantly correcting me. I would be close. But anyway, just to sort of get us in the math sense of Long Division. But a lot of people speculated about what that term means. So I'm going to read you a few things. Publishers Weekly says about this book that it's a gesture of compassionate attention to the marginal, humble pieces of a common life. Several people pulled that one out. At stake, this is the same review, is how to reconcile the love, pleasure, and retrospective cast of a middle-aged mind with the less thoughtful era of mercantile Zoomburbs in which we find ourselves. And what is a Zoomburb? Do you guys remember? A suburb growing even faster than a boomburb. All right. A review by Jacob Bennett. Long Division also engages the more abstract practice of figuring out how many ways a life can be divided. How many ways the attention can bifurcate. I love that word, bifurcate. However, time, people and places and practices fade as new drags on preference take hold. As Yeats would say, things fall apart, the center will not hold, things move away from each other through a divisive kind of process. Joey Connolly, people pulled out some from this. Beyond the math association, the title holds a different connotation, one with an undercurrent of loss and slow deterioration of some kind of relationship where people are divided. The longer I think, the more somber the title becomes, he says. And Joey Conley also says, Long Division is exactly what I expect a book of poems to be. Sincere despite the wit. He doesn't like wit so much, we like wit, but it's also sincere. We had a long talk about 18th and 19th century sincerity and wit, rather wit and then sincerity. And I lost my place. Entertaining, impeccably crafted, and emotionally resonant, galloping, wild, and away. Jennifer Knox, in an interview that you can find on Best American Poetry's website, talks about this great idea, a mathematical soundness to life's absurdities. Life is absurd. We try to count and make lists and do math to make things more grounded. In Mid-American Review, John Freeman says this of elephants and butterflies. I would guess that Parker's brand of ironic inquiry will keep the critics busy for quite a while. Not since Wallace Stevens has America produced a poet as complex and varied as he is accessible. Here's my praise, Wallace Stevens and Alan Michael Parker. Please help me welcome to the stage Alan Michael Parker, along with his wit, his mathematical soundness, his absurdity, and his wildly galloping words.
Well, hi. You can introduce me anytime. Oh my gosh, thank you. We could just go places and you could just... Can we have a table? Janice will do my intro. Have dinner? Can we have a table? Can you hear me? Is this all right? That's better. All right. I'm Alan. Nice to meet you. Q and A afterwards, so if you have Q's, I might have A's. Or I could have A's, you could have Q's. We could trade. We could do that. Fictioneers here, people who are fiction poets. Touchdown. Touchdown. I once won a bet with a friend of mine that I could make my students say touchdown while he watched from outside the door. And in fact did the same question, fiction writers, poets, and touchdown, and the whole class went touchdown, and he walked in and gave me $10, and then he walked out. He said, what was that? I said, payment. What do you mean, what was that? I'm just here to manipulate you, that's all. I'm going to read from Whaleman. I'm going to read a little excerpt from the novel that came out about a year and a half ago now, because there are fictioneers here, and also because I thought you might be interested. And then I'm going to read some poems. I'll read poems from Elephants and Butterflies, and from mostly from Long Division, and then I might read a couple of new poems mixed in there. And new is it's an odd thing to be a publishing poet, because the backlog, it takes so long to publish a book of poems that by the time the book comes out, you've probably got about a half of another book on the way already. And that's the case with this. This is my new book, and there are new poems. And so, all right, you understand. So, Whaleman is a story of a guy whose mom dies 3 weeks prior to the opening of the novel. And the novel opens with it takes place in a fictional town in the Research Triangle. And our guy is a 29-year-old student chef. He's in cooking school. He's been estranged from his mom for a long time, and his dad had passed already, and there are no siblings. Although there was a sibling in an earlier draft of the novel, just I dumped the brother. And then I made up the brother later. So the novel is an exploration of his grieving, but because I'm the person who's writing about it, the way he grieves is he builds a 64-foot long and 16-foot high wooden whale on her lawn. And the whale becomes a focus for cults, basically, some people who want to worship it, as well as national broadcast media. There's a love story. There are FBI people involved. There's who helps him build the whale, and I'm actually going to read from one of these passages. So someone who comes along and helps him is a guy named Rick, and what we're going to see, our guy's name is Avi, A-V-I. We're going to see Avi and Rick, and they're talking about, they're looking at building the whale. That's basically where we are at this point. It's about halfway through the novel. On the flattest, oh, and they're talking about the love interest. Her name is Bean, which is short for Lima Bean, which might stand for LB, which might stand for Laura, but we actually don't know, really. On the flattest ground available, the two men lined up all 9 of the Stanley 3-in-1 workbenches. Tongue and groove ply follow sheet after sheet, liquid nailed and staple gunned, a long flat runway, 8 sheets in all, 64 feet long. It took hours and hours, and then it took another hour. That last one worse, one too many. Then the 2 men stood back to see. Rick said. He bit his fingernail. Avi said. Oops, forgot. He reached into his tool belt. Try these. He handed Rick a bundle of coffee stirrers, nabbed a bunch. On the side, Avi hired Rick, but told him he had to quit smoking. So Rick's going through some stuff. Thanks, Rick said. That's going to be heavy. He munched a stirrer. Avi agreed. Lighter cut in strips, Rick said. Still not light, Avi said. The guys stood guyishly there. Damn, Rick said. Crazy. It's your design. It's your whale. Avi thought about that. Yeah, he said, I guess. Yours too, though. Maybe Rick was pleased, munchity munch. You were married, right? Avi changed the subject. Was. Bad scene. What was her name? Is, Rick said. Delia. Delia. When the marriage worked for 10 minutes, Rick said. His deadpan stayed dead. For 10 minutes. You have a kid, right? Avi returned to the conversation, or to the part that had been allowed. Girl, Sarah, goes to state. Nice, Avi said. He wondered if Bean had gone to college. Okay, Avi said. 2 questions. Shoot twice, Rick said. Right. 1, do you think you trusted your wife? I mean, is that even possible, or what? He made a V, 2 fingers worth, the victim, Churchill stepping off the plane. 2, do you think that she could love you and leave you? I mean, isn't that just some bullshit women say? Like, I love you, but I'm leaving your sorry ass? Rick hadn't budged, but he looked suddenly ill. Rick, man, just try one of the questions. Don't know what women say, Rick said. Where I live, trust is better than a promise. Exactly. That's it, Avi exclaimed and clapped his hands. That's what I mean. Boss, Rick said, warily. Not good. It is, Avi said. She's full of promises. They all are, but trust, man, that's the thing. Christ, Rick said, ending his cigarette. Sounds right, Avi said. So I met a girl. She's named Bean, but she might be named Miha, I think. Oh, that's one of her other names. Miha, Rick said. Nice, Rick said. I met her, remember? Right, she's okay. Gotcha, Rick said. You don't trust her. For one, she's got a couple of names. Right, can't decide what I think of that. You've got a couple of names, Rick said to Avi. Avi didn't know what to say. Smoking would help, Rick said. Yeah, but it kills you, Avi said. Kills you dead. Worth it, Rick said. I'm dead without smokes. Me, huh, Avi said. Rick was mournful. Do guys who build houses talk like this? I mean, during their breaks and all? Rick almost smiled. When they smoke, they do, he said. When they don't smoke, they stab each other with screwdrivers. Funny, Avi said. Aren't you a riot? Yep, Rick said. Then they use nail guns. For an addict, you've got an okay sense of humor. Rick glared at Avi. Gotcha, Avi said, feeling just a wee bit sensitive. Shut up, Rick said. Don't say shit like that. Christmas bonus, remember? Rick munched hard on his stir. Okay, break's over. Got an hour or so before sunset. So the challenge of that character, and for you people writing fiction, so Rick doesn't talk. And it's really hard to write a character who doesn't talk. Because you on in his head. It's not omniscient. So how do you get that guy to be somehow performative of whatever stuff is going on, and how do you communicate his feelings? And it's crucial that Avi has enough banter with Rick to get Rick to kind of overcommit himself socially and emotionally. And it was really hard to write a guy who doesn't like to talk. He is an extension of a guy in my first novel who also doesn't like to talk. So it was a narrative problem I hadn't finished, and in this book I was working it out a bit more. I'm happy to talk about that later. It could be an A if it inspires a Q. Poems. So your animals class is here. There's an animals class here?
I teach you a class, they're not animals, I teach you a class on the relationship between humans and animals. And these are the students.
If the animals were here, as they were in the Bible, and metaphor still work, I might say to you, I miss you like the mountain lion misses the sky. But I would have to say this in my head, since you're not here, which is why I miss you. I guess the animals could be in my head if I were to reread the Bible. I guess I could speak the truth if I knew the truth. I saw a groundhog today, and dragonflies. The same 4 hawks have circled above me for a week. That's one thing about the animals, their sameness to us. My lack of experience with animals seems an absence, although it's not the same as missing you. If an elephant were here, and I could climb up and ride to you, that trunk, those ears, crashed through the jungle to where poor you dried your blouse on a stick above a fire, I still might not believe that the elephant exists. Has that happened to you? Of course, I understand that you're not here to answer, but would you be amazed, your blouse dipping into the flames? I would like to be amazed. If a water buffalo were here, asleep in the dusty road, and I were a great Chinese poet, I would be amazed. Maybe you would be here too. Water buffalo have massive heads. There's something true about the size of the water buffalo's head. And that's another thing about the animals, their size compared to ours. Do the animals miss us? Probably not. The groundhog popped up and stared, but not at me. And I laughed. One more thing about the animals. We measure their behavior against our own. Kind of an assignment in the way that probably you might call it prompt. Got an assignment once to write a poem about a first experience. And so, being who I am, I wrote a poem about a first experience, and I made it up. Because I like making stuff up, as you know from that interview, probably, or at least some of you do. So, I'm not a very interesting person. I'm not really, I teach and I ride a bike and I cook and I go home, and that's, so you really don't want me to write autobiography, because what would I write about? And you'd be bored off your nut, as they say, which assumes there is a nut to be bored off, and I think it's a line about a squirrel, but I don't know where that idiom comes from. Bored off your nut? It could be a New York thing. New York, squirrels. So I'm going to read, this is the poem that I wrote in response to this prompt, which is to write about our first experience. It's called Peaches or Plums. Oh, how I hate my mind, all those memories that have invented their own memories. Take my first love, for instance. how after Mass we kneel underneath the back stairs and kiss and kiss and kiss and. Were her lips like peaches or plums? She was Catholic, and she wanted to be bad, and I loved her more than baseball. But all the other days divided us, carry the one, nothing left over. So strange only to kiss on a Sunday, to hold my own breath again for a week, another 10,022 minutes of wretched puberty, until she moved to Iowa, or Ohio, or the moon. Oh, I can still remember nothing about her, only kissing, and the impossible geometry of the descending stairs that rose to the church kitchen, her breath like hot nutmeg, and a little like the ocean. And once, oh my God, she bit me. A first taste of my body, blood in her smile. So you can see numbers, and these poets, they're there in, I think they are there in row 5, seats 2 to 7. So I have this thing about numbers, which is that I count stuff, like most everything. Like I count and I count and I count most everything. Like 11 seats here and 13 seats there, and why is it 11 and not 12? And that's the cut of the amphitheater, but okay, there are 11 seats, so why didn't it go up to 12? So it both makes me a crazy person and also uncrazies me, because it organizes the universe for me in my head, and it's not a good place to be if you're not organized. So I'm going to read some stuff from Long Division, which is about, in part, the metaphors that we use when we're thinking about math, the organizing principles that we use. I want to be clear that the counting doesn't make me crazy. The crazy is all by myself. Those are different things. The counting is something else. Family math. I am more than half the age of my father, who has lived more than twice as long as his father, who died at 36. Once a year for 4 days, I am 2 years older than my wife, until her birthday. In practical terms, I am 3 times older than the internet, 12 times the age of my obsolescent computer, 5 times older than the new century, and only now a half century old. I have taught for more than half my life. Most afternoons of teaching follow unfinished mornings. Yesterday, I held a book 7 times older than I am. 28 hours and a few minutes later, I still recall the smell, a leathery, mildew tang. 17 and 1/2 years ago, my son was born, which took 12 hours. His delivery came 2 weeks late. The smell in the delivery room seems primordial, iron in the blood, and shit, and another kind of smell, more abstract, if that's possible. 26 years ago, I studied abstract ideas in school, and I still don't know what's possible. Now, I teach. My mother taught for 29 years until she retired to read. My friend remembers all he reads, so when does he finish a book? I can't remember when I stopped counting on my fingers. Where was I in language? I feel older than all the wars going on, but I'm not. Some are very old. Sadness remains the source of my politics. In my home, very few items I own are older than I am, and almost none I use. We say, the wind dies down. Is that what we mean? The wind has lived? When babies are born, they don't know either night or day. We teach them. Tomorrow is not my birthday, but all the math will change again. More to busy me, more to figure and record, more to have, more to let go. are a couple different kinds of poems in this collection, including the math poems. There are list poems. I'm going to read a list poem in a little while. And there are also fables. I've been playing a lot with fable forms, thinking my way through the history of the fable. It hasn't gone very well, but I'm still thinking my way through the history of the fable. And I'm really interested in the kinds of conventions that the fable employs, like whether it's the talking animal or it's some kind of magical thing that's traded in, or it's the epic journey sent, the wrong sibling, usually the younger one, is sent on the epic journey to discover that that sibling, usually male, is actually the right sibling, and the older one, and so the kinds of mechanics of the fable have been really interesting to me. And I've been trying to write these fables, or I've been writing these fables that are updated versions, and they take usually one technical aspect of the history of the fable, and they play with it. They explore it to its maybe logical extreme of an illogical idea. So I think that's right. I don't know. I don't know. I'll just leave that there. So I'm going to read two of these. Little Lunchtime Fable is the first one. And, yeah, I think you just got a Little Lunchtime Fable. When she complained about the lettuce, not on the BLT, and the waiter tripped and dumped iced coffee on her white linen skirt, and the manager apologized by starting to cry, and blew his big nose into a little handkerchief that seemed to flutter and float and stay in the air like a weird cloud. She knew that in this moment, by holding still, she would have her three wishes: compassion, fairness, wealth. With her eyes closed, last night's moon waxed, and the surf curled, and the moon and the surf together were here again inside her, and the wind was tomorrow's wind, and her eyes were their original seashells. She knew the tide carried the pebble of her future daughter dancing on the eve of her 10th birthday with so many bracelets. She knew where to find the young girl who was herself, whom she had walked by on the boardwalk, to whom she had nodded. She knew the sure course her blood would take in the sand. She knew that a day was a wish, and that knowing was a wish, and that one of her wishes was really her mother's. Here, it's okay. She handed the manager his handkerchief. All three wishes wished. I think she realizes that her mother's wish is wealth, that the compassion and the fairness are her wishes. That's what I think. I think that's what she gets when she hands that handkerchief over, that she figures that out. Mama wanted me to have wealth. And I think she defines wealth by compassion and fairness. I think that's what she gets right for herself at the end of that poem. Sorry to give you my own gloss, but I think that's what she learns. A fable upside down. I see it, he cried, and he handed up a pen, a squeaky toy, and the porcelain chicken egg cup that Grandma favored. Stay there, said his father. What else? Said his mother. He liked living upside down. The breeze felt open. Gravity was new again. The sun played him like a tuning fork. He knew the dew, spent more time with the rain, saw what the cat would kill. He liked the math. 4 tires equal 1 car. And the sine of a driveway equals the cosine of the corner plus his sister's bike. Always he found what had been missing for years. A yogi visited. The upside-down man said, I am you. And the yogi tapped his foot. Yes. A politician visited. The upside-down man knew where she had come from, what she used to be. Go back to your beliefs, he said. Climb down. A doctor visited. The upside-down man asked, will all this tingling kill me? Maybe he was lonely. There were leaves and sticks and worms at night. In time, the future made sense to him, for he knew each ending was the same. He cherished the rolling nectarine, the chit-chat palace of the mice, the good aim of the newspaper girl. He learned to live with the surf in his head, the hematological tide, so much thunder. He knew love's ankle. When he died, he was buried. It grew like that. Roots, trunk, splashy silver leaves. A million miles of thread. All night, the shirts shrugged, the pants paced, the shoes nudged the darkness, and the shoes never worn pointed up to greet the undertaker. All night, the socks balled into planets an ant under the sink could only imagine. All night, the neckties were free, the underwear hugged its dear ones, the t-shirt flocked in V's, ready for winter, the handkerchiefs softly blew their horns, the jeans clung to their hopes like coal dust to a miner. A parka lay down in the snow, a sweater pulled itself through, a windbreaker resisted, a sweatshirt practiced, a raincoat poured into its sleeves like water into a vase of yellow roses. In the bedroom, the carpet lay back and hoped to see stars, all those heroes. All night, the carpet could never decide what to be, in the light that could never decide what to be. A field of lavender and shale, or a Los Angeles of the mind, or the braided whispers of lovers, or rows of plain labels at the pharmacy. Poor dear the carpet, so exposed. All night the bed made room, and both reading lamps nodded, grim as rabbis. On the dresser the clock dreamed of being a toaster, every morning a surprise. Then the clock dreamed of being a box of cereal, every ending a surprise. The glass of water bathed. The curtains ached to begin the movie. The window panes saw through every illusion. All night the book on the nightstand prayed to be revealed, hands together. The air all night lurked and sulked like the past. The pillows dreamed of the Mississippi, of deltas, silt and sediment, of opening onto the sea, of the horizon. The pillows at the head of the bed puffed all night like an ocean liner bound for Europe for the 1920s, for the great parade across the Atlantic. All night the pillows in white tie and tails, all night in a top hat, all night in pearls. We're very polite. We should fix that. I'm going to fix that now. So the list poem, I'll do this. These are poems you should never write, right? You should never write, don't do this. Don't ever write, don't, because like when you were what, in middle school, after the teacher had said in poetry class or in English class, you had said, teacher said, write a poem. And you had said, what's a poem, what do you mean? And the teacher said, well, you know, a poem's a feeling, just write a feeling. And that, of course, didn't work. Because you're not going to, you know, you're what, 11? You're not going to tell your teacher you're, what, a feeling? Poem's not a feeling. So then you went back to the teacher, same teacher, Mrs. Rometer, and you said, hey, Mrs. R, because she liked to be called that. I don't have a poem. And she'd say, well, we'll write a poem. And you say, what's a poem? You go through the whole thing. What's a poem? And then she said, a poem is a feeling. You said, you try that. You don't have any feelings, whatever. And then you'd say, so what do I do? And she'd say, well, write a list of poems. Just make a list. And you would say, that's dumb in your head. And then you would do it and it'd be dumb. Because you were right, because it's dumb. Because what list, you know, there's no formal properties. It's just apparently numbers. So I started writing these poems because I hated them. And I thought that it was a good idea to try to figure out why I hated certain kinds of poems, and so the way to figure that out for me is to write them. Right? So try to do something impossible. So I've done a bunch of these list poems, and what I realized is that they are dramatic monologues, as it turns out, for you theater people, that they are performed, that they accumulate character as we go through the list, the numbers in the list. And so that's what I'm playing with formally. 18 ways to consider a neighbor whose holiday lights stay up all year. 1. He's hopeful. 2. He's negligent and unable to read social cues. 3. This is how he treats his body. 4. He's secretly against mirth. 5. He's obsessed with Immanuel Kant's The Critique of Pure Reason, 1781. 6. He is spelling something into space. 7. At breakfast, he began to hear the voice of his long-dead hypochondriac mother, saying, "Eat, eat," and then he felt as though slapped suddenly in the back of the head by the air. 8. He knows my father-in-law, and they've conferred. 9. Now is the winter of my discontent. 10. He and the mailman and the UPS woman she's new, and the Jehovah's Witnesses dressed like busboys, and the trick-or-treaters, and the meter guy with his can of mace, in the middle of the night flattened whack of the newspaper on the front walk. Who can go anywhere? 11. He's helping me be Jewish. 12. When in Rome, burn. 13. How am I to write a poem for fun? 14. He knows. He never forgets. 15. Like lamps lit for all those husbands lost at sea. 16. Shh. 17. He's my muse, my indignity. 18. I, with my little words, I always go out. I like the bang. I like the bang. A tough poem. This is a tough poem. That's a heads up. A poem for Larry. He thought he might swallow whole his youngest daughter if she didn't stop hurting herself when she was alone. She would complain, of course, carry on inside his big dad belly, but she would be safe there until she was ready to come back. The holes she had made in herself healed. She had been mean to her sisters, too, practicing, it would seem. He would swallow the moon to keep her company, one white slice sliding down to arrive in her arms, and he would drink and drink a river so that the moon would rise over water and she could see how beautiful. She would probably need something to do. Things would be comforting, just like at home, stuff to touch. Maybe he would swallow for her a rowboat with a trolling motor to drift under the muscled clouds, squeezing from all sides. Maybe a jug of OJ. Maybe a CD player. Ashore, she could ride her own small horse if she wanted. She could eat anything, wear nothing to care about, sing badly, softly, always shy, but she would have no need for pain. Peace, the fish dreamy, all music, the moon rising behind her, as she rode into the middle of the river to drift oars up. The cranes, or egrets, some kind of giant bird, would unfold awkwardly their paperclip bodies, and then launch themselves into the air, flap in slow-mo their great wings, wide and low over the marsh grass, and majestically higher for her. I don't know Larry. Anybody know Larry? There's a lot of Larrys right there. You know, is it generational? Or are they like over 35? Yeah. Anybody know a Larry under 35? That's a cool thing. You know a Larry under 35?
That's cool.
How old is that Larry?
He's in college.
He's in college.
He's in college.
You know a Larry under 35? Well then. Cool. Plays overseas in Greece. France. Those are good leagues. How big is he? Can he throw down? He's 6'2", but he's got hops. I'm so jealous. I'm so jealous. I'm like 5'1". Nothing. I gotta play baseball. I'm gonna read 2 more poems. 16 ways old people terrify the young. 1, they have sex with each other. 2, they drive around. 3, they pretend they're thinking. They pretend they're not thinking about dying. 4, the vigor of diving through the waves through time, or the splash of the body sprinting toward love. What's a sea if not for swimming? 5, and what about those old people who walk, I don't know, like 79 miles every morning on the beach? Skin cancer. Yo, they're gonna die. 6, quote, vex not his ghost, oh let him pass. He hates him that would upon the rack of this tough world stretch him out longer. End quote. Clear 5-3-3-15-17. 7, it's a lie. They were never young. 8, holidays were invented by old people to dress up and pretend they're all presents for young people. 9, the arc of story graphed upon the axes of love and death. 10, they actually invented the computer. 11, oh, and they wrote the poems. 12, their whacked out sense of sound, no guitars or headphones, no cars or guns, just TV commercials on mute, telephones, cats, and the sky. 13, it's like grout or glue or maybe gum, whatever holds those bones together. 14, they like to die. 15, they like to die in big buildings surrounded by other people, although occasionally one of them will take off to die in the woods or at the beach, someplace far away, which accounts for the better old people movies. 16, or they just die. One on the beach, just like today, with only 3 people there in the winter to see them. A body. All right. Feeding a poem to a horse. An apple would be better, bitten down like the moon to a crunchy nub scored with greed. His lips flare in the air from the fence of his teeth, and his tough tail flicks where the flies stay. A carrot would be better than these 4-legged lines that flee from me and never meet any sweet little need. So we both might gallop wild and away. Thanks, folks. Woot. Q's, A's, A's, Q's. Stuff we can talk about. Hello, tell me your name.
My name is Rubio Sorio.
Hi, I'm Alan.
Fuller's creative writing.
Oh, cool. Good for you.
We did go over your upside down poem,
Mm-hmm.
and I was curious as to what mindset did you get into, or how did you go about creating a poem like that? Because it has so much direction to it. Like it's definitely mathematical.
Um, that poem it takes a irrational premise and treats it rationally, right? So the irrational premise is the guy's living upside down and that's possible. And I'm pushing off of some fables specifically by Jorge Luis Borges, and especially thinking about one of his fables about a guy who remembers absolutely everything. I mean everything, to like, every little bit of this microphone stand he'll remember, to the point where ultimately he dies of extra memory. Fumes the Memorials, which is this fable. So I'm thinking hard about how to do something like that, like the sort of what if stuff, which is where the poem began. And then once it began there, getting into upside down think was the hardest thing. I didn't stand on my head to try to see what he would see, because I'd fall and I'd hurt myself, and then I wouldn't be able to write the poem because I'd be in the hospital. And then if I'm in the hospital and my health insurance runs out, then there's all this stuff. So I had to be very clear that I wasn't going to give myself easy outs when it came to thinking about what he would see upside down. So instead of dust bunnies or instead of stuff you might expect to be underneath the furniture, he sees other things. In the Borges story, they send people to meet this kid, he's really a kid, Fumes the Memorious, and to interrogate him. And so the yogi and the politician and the doctor are following some of that fable's lead, meaning I stole it. So it's a complex, it's got its origins in literature, but I'm really trying to think my way through what it would mean for this representative character to live upside down. And then by way of the meta reading, living upside down is a little bit like what it's like to live in an artist in a consumer culture when you're kind of living upside down. So at least at the metaphorical or allegorical level, I think that's available. I'm not trying to hit that very hard. I'm not trying to say, oh wait, artists are, living upside down, all of us, necessarily. But they're still, I identify with him upside down. You're welcome.
That's how you get a student in class read the poem when she did a headstand.
Oh,
And she then read the poem and said it made much more sense to her.
it's upside down. It's upside down thing. It's like if you're dramatic monologue horse, it's horse thing. You gotta get into that mindset so that the character's legit.
I don't think it makes sense to her. But she
No, I get it. It makes sense to me. If I could do a headstand, the poem would be better. That might have been a lie. Which I'm willing to do. A lot. So, can't promise the truth beatness here.
You've written 3 novels, but the poetry seems to be your primary focus. Is that
Increasingly, it's both. The novels have come over the first one came out in the last 10 years, it's been 3 novels. So they've come more frequent, and now it's my training is in poetry. My graduate work is in poetry, and I do feel that even with the kinds of dialogue, the scene I read from Whaleman, that my ear is very important to me when I'm thinking my way through language and scene and character. So I'm trying to tune it pretty carefully. But novels are awesome. think that's delightful. It means that I can totally commit myself to doing something as ambitious as I want. And I can try anything. And novels are a really good site for politics for me. So each of my novels has been political um, in its side tent, as it were. They look like they're books about something, but under the big top, and then in the side tent they're about politics. And this next one is really much more. The big tent is politics, and the side tent is character. They let you play. So the long answer is the novels are really bloody. That's the short answer. Short answer is now it's book by book, rather than thinking, oh, I'm going to write a novel or I'm going to write a book of poems. And I'm working on a book of poems at the moment. The novel in press needs another draft before it goes to my editor, which is probably the next 6 months. And then there's also perhaps this co-edited project, perhaps a book of essays. I'm pretty fanatically committed to my own futility. You're welcome. I recommend writing novels. I mean, how cool to wrap your mind into that, to be wrapped around by a book how cool is that? May you find someone to haze. Yes, hi.
Hi.
Who are you?
Russell Davis.
I knew this.
I'm Lizzle. Going back to the Upside Down fable,
Yeah.
and I remember you had said something to the fact that you like to go to the logical extreme of an irrational idea, and it kind of reminded me of like magical realism, almost like you want to take one aspect and then make everything within that illogical thought logical in the sense. Of course, think upside down. Do you translate that? Is that present in your novels as well?
Ooh, good question. Cool. No.
No.
But I'm teaching a world literatures class now. One of the things I do is I'll teach 100 Years of Solitude. I've taught it many times, and I'm really committed to that book. And I'm really committed to magical realism. One of the things I understand about magical realism is that here's a ridiculous generalization. About to come. Okay, so I think magical realism owes as much to the politics of Latin American affairs in its time, which means the 1960s and 70s, as it does to Catholicism, which for me has to do with, and I'm not Catholic, so it has to do with the ways in which transubstantiation is kind of factored in as a literary technique. That the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost can all just be in the book because that's the way it is. And I think Garcia Marquez, in particular, has a very Catholic imagination. Okay, I ain't Catholic. So in part, that move resists me, but I also feel like it's not mine. My novels are much more committed to thinking through small-town American behaviors. Not Macondo. But certainly there's whacked-out magic, even if it's not magical realism, in all my work. My interest in the imagination trumps my interest in reality. That's a good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that. Why don't you do that? I don't know. That's a good question. And I know someone named Lizel. And you're Lizzle. Oh, it's a name.
Yeah.
I'm not Catholic.
Right.
We got stuff. We're not. Hi, little Dr. Fuller. She got there before Mama got. She called you that.
I know.
I know.
Yeah.
It's got over you, huh? She called me bald guy. She called me shaved guy. What does she call me? Short shaved guy. Whaleman did and does have drawings. It has doodles. It was in Whale. There are pictures in Whaleman. There are. It had cartoons. It had 20 cartoons at one point. And they're no longer there. They were there as a way from. They're no longer there. Whaleman has pictures. So these are the diagrams. Actually, Avi doodles because he's dreaming. So there are his pictures that he wakes up in the middle of the night and draws of the whale that he wants to build. So these are Avi's whales, and there are lots of his doodles. And they're also, so this whale is buildable, by the way. The part of what I read, so I have a friend who's I would say a mechanical genius. He can do anything. And I asked him, and he gave me, we talked through, I said, this is what I need this, I need that, I need that. And he came up with a plan for how to build this. And then I went to Home Depot, and I talked to the manager, and I said, hey, I'm a novelist, I want to write, this is my picture, I want to build this. And they gave me the shopping list. So there's also the whole shopping list. And you can build this whale at home. It's doable. And the engineering's right. 16 feet high and 64 feet long. And I promise the broadcast media will come. They'll show up. So, yeah, I can't draw. So these doodles are, of course, what I would draw were I to be the person who drew these doodles by someone who can't draw, which would be my character who can't draw. What a coincidence.
Thinking you had drawings and
Yeah.
if having a partner who's a visual artist, if that has started to sort of push you for thinking about that
Well, her
relationship.
goofiness is really in my work.
Or goofy.
Yeah, I think so.
But no.
Boy. Our work has become more connected over the last, I would say, 5 years than it's been in our artistic lives together by way of our output looks a little bit more like each other's, has more in common. Our working principles have long had a lot in common, but now, I'm not gonna make any trouble. What did you do to me? Like, you should see, like,
She's staring at her. Okay, we're trying to
I am
question.
toast.
Go to Patrick Mohawk.
Patrick Malone.
Okay, I'm Patrick. I'm an English major and a poet as well, and I'm
Awesome.
amazed by how, especially the animal poem, you took such like an innocent idea, and it was very semi childish on the surface, but ran so deep it transgressed any ideology and went deeper than I have ever heard an animal go. And
Keep him.
I'm wondering if
Keep
you
him.
do that purposely or if and how you do that if you do so.
It's being yes. You gave me an or question, so the answer is going to be yes. Do you do this or that? And the answer is yes. But now I have to elaborate. Okay. So one of my models as a poet is Frost, and Frost's interest in being misread, being the most misread poet in America, and which he basically said to Burnshaw. And what he wanted was to write these poems that looked like they were about farmers and people sitting around talking smack in New England, and fences, and neighbors, and swinging from trees, and taking walks. And the ideas for him were under the surface and quite embedded, but also relatively terrible. He's a poet of deep terror, and the critics have caught up to him, but not really until his 90th birthday, which happened in the late 50s, 1959. Maybe it's not his 90th, maybe it's his 80th. I have to figure out the year he was born. So there was a famous cocktail party where this critic stood up and made a toast to Robert Frost, the most terrifying poet in America, and all the graduate students went scurrying back because they're like little rats to their books of Frost and said, wow, he really is scary under there. Good fences make awful neighbors. And I take it as a model. I'm trying to get these poems into your body. I really want them to be activated once they're in you, which means accessibility matters. I'm not looking for linguistic difficulty. I'm not the person who wants to give you a poem that's hard to figure out on the surface, and then you feel like you've won. It's not a contest between me smart and you there to tell me how smart I am. It's instead an act of communication and an art act where I'm trying to get you to have a meaningful experience of reading this particular work. And my sense, my aesthetics, my interests are accessibility. And then digging into the philosophical and spiritual and theological and perverse ideas that are in my thinking so that we can share. And then I can make you spiritual, philosophical, and perverse. You're welcome. Hi. Ooh, wait, ooh, wait, ooh, wait, ooh, wait, ooh, wait, ooh, somebody lob. Ooh, wait, ooh, wait. See the tennis game? Wait, I'll do it again. Ready? Wait, somebody lob. Ooh, wait, ooh, wait. It's all ground strokes. Ooh, wait.
Dr. Fuller in our poetry class has told us that if you
$1,500 small unmarked bills. No? That's not what she told me?
has told us that if we run into like writer's block to lower our standards, and I just wonder, like, well, one, how do you get inspiration for your work, and two, when you do run into those blocks, like, how do you deal with those?
Mostly I read and I write, and then I write crap. And then so I completely agree with her if that's what she's recommending. You lower your standards, you just write crap. I don't actually believe in writer's block. I think you can always write badly. So just do that. Just type. And eventually your literary self will take over. And there'll be a couple of words that you like, or there'll be a sentence, or there'll be a scene. But if you just get it on the page, you can play with it eventually. So I try just to generate material. I tend to be a somewhat obsessive rewriter of my work. Maybe like 100 drafts of poems. Like the stuff you've read, these are poems that have all been through years of rewriting. And the job is the rewriting. So sometimes, especially with younger writers, get all wigged because I can't come up with an idea, And what I would say is come up with the idea after you've written something. Use the process of discovery to figure out what you're writing about, what you're thinking about, what the cool words are, and then push them around, play with them. But the other way to do that, the other entry for me is reading. And so before I start writing, I'll be reading. Most of my writing sessions begin with reading. And facing a blank wall and a lot of caffeine. A lot of caffeine. Yes, you just see my blood pressure when I'm writing. Boom! Hi.
Hi, I'm Jean. You talk about Frost.
Hi.
Who are other poets who have influenced you?
Oh my gosh. Most recently, the poets who have been influential, I would say, are, oh my gosh. Well, I taught Ceylon today, the great Holocaust poet, Paul Ceylon, whose work is very important to me. An American poet who died about 10, 12 years ago named Larry Levis. His work is very important to me. He was a guy who taught at Missouri and then at Utah and then at Virginia at the end of his life. Levis. Bishop is very important to me. Lots of European poets, lots of Polish poets. Zagajewski, Szymborska, Miłosz, Herbert, great Polish poets, all four of them, really important to me. Shakespeare, done. Herbert. Stevens, can I stop soon? No. Berryman,
That's fine.
Berryman, really important to me. John Berryman. Some who are, Eliot, wrote a book called Love Song with Motor Vehicles, my book of poems, so it's a lot of Eliot in my work. I think a lot about The Wasteland, a lot about that poem. Got some other stuff. Jory Graham.
What's the greatest lesson that you've learned from being a poet and like poetry?
Greatest lesson. That's a good question too. What's the greatest lesson? About writing or about
Right.
writing? Revise. That revise, 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 revise. Goose, run around the table. Revise, 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 revise. It's just, it's the job is making it better. And I happen to really love that part of the job. So for me, it's fortunate. I don't get all crazier when I look at the problems the poem poses. Love's a pretty good answer. Not bad. Compassion's not bad. Yeah, the lessons. Don't publish shit you're embarrassed by. That'd be a good lesson. So don't publish early. Don't publish on the web yet. Don't self-publish yet. I would be careful there because, hey, if I saw poems I wrote before I really, like, wow, really? Like, even if, and I'm not trying to scare you, but if my master's thesis were on the web, I would not be happy. I'd be like, oh, really, those poems? So, have readers, be in a crowd, share your work, love each other's work. Have readers who are not only going to congratulate you on how good a writer you are, have readers also who will tell you, this poem stinks. I don't get it. And a reader who doesn't get it and can explain why is a great reader to have. So that's why workshops are so cool. Because not everybody gets it, and you make them say why. And then you see why some people aren't going to get it, and then you can fix your poem again. I think I'm back to revision. Revision, revise, revise, revise. The job is revision. Composition is fun and sucks, but the job is revision. Hi.
Hi, I'm Erin.
Hi.
I think you said you started out with poetry, your training's in poetry. I'm new to poetry, but I think of poetry as sort of a shorter type of work. How does that, did you have a struggle going from working with poetry to working with a book that is like an extended theme as opposed to?
We're thinking about novels, you mean?
Yes.
Well, the first one took me 10 years, so I think I had some trouble. From soup to soupier. I think that book was 10 years in the writing. From the moment I started to the moment it came out, it was 10 years, and I had trouble selling it. But the long form, because of my various personality characteristics, we'll call them. So one of the things that I do with my novels is that I tend to map them out, and I put up these big poster boards in my study or in my studio, and so I can try to keep the whole book in my head visually, and maybe this is also the influence of living with someone who's a visual artist. So that helped me a lot thinking about long form prose. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, the biggest challenge for long form prose for me is that I can't keep the book in my head while I'm teaching. So it's harder for me to compose a novel during the semester when I'm a professor. So I tend to compose them at other times. Rewriting I have a little bit more access to, and revision when I'm teaching. But the original studio work and the time that it takes are hard to support when I'm working, which is a euphemism for not writing. That's for the professors. One more? One and done? One more? I'm happy to talk with you afterwards.